Excellent. Hi, everyone. My name is Dave Jobber with Plan to Place. I am part of the consultant team led by Ramey & Associates, and thank you so much for joining us this evening for our second of 4 area meetings related to the Petaluma General Plan update process. Tonight, we're going to be speaking about the northwest quadrant of the city, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. And as usual, before we start any meeting, we like to open up the Spanish interpretation channel so that folks that are following along in Spanish could also contribute. So with that, I'm going to ask Gustavo to read this slide, and we'll go ahead and open that channel. Gustavo, I think you might still be muted.
Thank you. O sea, la interpretación simultánea para esta junta se dará en los siguientes idiomas, que es el español. Por favor, haga clic en el icono de Interpretation en la barra de herramientas que está localizada abajo de su pantalla para acceder al idioma deseado. Okay,
excellent. Thank you so much, Gustavo. And with that, we now have the Spanish room open. And Michelle, thank you for recording that channel. Excellent. So just a couple quick housekeeping items here before we launch into the presentation. This will be interactive. We're going to be breaking out into small groups, and at that point, we're going to ask you all to be able to unmute yourself so you can contribute. So just a quick reminder, I'm sure you all are Zoom experts at this point, but just a quick reminder to definitely unmute yourself before you speak when we move into the small groups. And we do also have closed captioning available. If that is something you're interested in, that will be on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You can click that and get access to that. We will want to do a facilitated discussion when we get to the small groups. So we're going to ask to use the hand raise feature, and that's in your reactions button. Also on your toolbar at the bottom, if you click that, that'll bring up an option to actually click raise hand, and that'll put a little raise hand symbol next to your name to let us know that you're ready to contribute. We also do have chat available for this meeting. So throughout the meeting, if you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to put them in the chat, but we'll use that most of the time when we get into the small groups. That's when it'll be another option for you to contribute and add input if you didn't want to verbalize your input. So that option will be available to you as well. So I just want to make sure we highlight that. And then we will be doing some interactive polling at the beginning of the meeting as well. And that is really to kind of understand who's in the meeting with us and get some general demographic information, which is really important to us as we move down through all the meetings and activities and engagement activities with you all, just to get a sense of who we've spoken to and where some of the gaps might lie, so that we make sure that we get a diverse perspective of input as we hold all of these engagement events. That's going to be done through Menti. I'll let you know a little bit more about how that's going to work when we get there. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to have a breakout group discussion, which is the most important reason as to why we're here tonight, is to hear from you all. I did want to highlight that there will be a workshop coming up on September 29th, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And we definitely recommend that you contribute more at area meetings coming up, which we'll also talk about. And then lastly, all of the information from this meeting, from previous meetings, and for future meetings will be on the project website at planpetaluma.org. We will see presentations, you'll see meeting summaries, and a lot of great information. So highly recommend you go there as well. So last bit of news is if you have any technical difficulties, please feel free to reach out to Paul at plantoplace.com. My colleague will be able to help you out. For those listening along in Spanish, that information is also available, and Gustavo at GustavoAlonsoSanchez@gmail.com will be able to help you out there. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Heather Hines to get us started.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to see so many people joining us. Thank you so much for participating in this. This is really these first area meetings, quadrant neighborhood meetings, are really the kickoff of some of the direct community engagement with the general plan update process. So we're just thrilled that you're here, looking forward to our discussions and getting input from all of you about the northwest quadrant of the city. I want to quickly, this is not the only time that you will have the opportunity to get involved. So I know later in the presentation, we'll summarize some of the upcoming events, and there will be a lot of engagement throughout this process. So this is really kicking it off. Introductions, I want to take a moment. There's a number of city staff here that I wanted to point out, and we will be in the breakout rooms to answer questions or help guide the discussion as applicable. So myself, Heather Hines, you also have Christina Paul, who is the policy planner and general plan lead for this project. Jessica, who is with our communications team with the city, and David Garcia, who is also with our planning staff. For the prime general plan consultant, Ramey and Associates, we have Matt, Ramey, Ron Whitmore, Lillian, Michelle, and then along with that, we also, part of the general plan consulting team, we have Plan to Place. So Dave Javid, Paul, and Rachel. So we're happy to have you here. Looking forward to a robust discussion. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dan with Know Before You Grow for a few updates and announcements from that group.
Good evening. Thank you for the Know Before You Grow folks for coming, even though you're not in the whichever quadrant this is tonight. I know I'm going to have to come back on Monday. For those of you who haven't heard from me before, Know Before You Grow is a group of Petaluma folks interested in educating ourselves on issues surrounding housing, transportation, city finances, and climate action. And we're in the midst of a 22-month series of programs to help us understand the general plan process. Previous sessions are available on YouTube, and you can find those from the urbanchat.org website. We have a number of upcoming meetings. First off, if you're interested in joining the group, joining planning for future sessions, tomorrow at Aquas, we'll be getting together for lunch at noon. Next Tuesday, if you haven't already had a Cool Cities pitch made to you, Natasha Giuliana, I can talk really, will be giving us a pitch for that. On September 8th, we'll be talking about Planning 101 with Christina Paul. September 22nd, we'll have nationally known author of books like Sustainable Nation and Sustainable Urbanism, Doug Farr. And on November 13th, we'll be talking about vehicle miles traveled with various folks. If you're interested in talking more about these issues or helping us plan future events, please join us tomorrow at noon at Aquas Cafe and check out the website at urbanchat.org. And now back over to Dave.
Thank you so much, Dan, and thank you, Heather. So I want to just quickly give us an overview of the purpose and agenda for this evening before I hand it off to Ron to start the presentation. So we want to give you a general background as to what the general plan process is going to entail, and the different activities that we have planned. We definitely want to highlight what we've heard thus far from the General Plan Advisory Committee and other outreach and the analysis the team has done, and highlight some of that. Most importantly, as I mentioned before, we're here to brainstorm with you all to really understand what the unique qualities and issues are in this particular area of the city, and then also talk about opportunities for change, where improvement could happen, where also areas of stability are, and what we want to kind of keep and preserve in this area. And that'll be a facilitated discussion, as I mentioned earlier, in small groups. So overall, we're going to start with a quick poll that I'll bring up here momentarily. As I mentioned, Ron will give us a project overview. We'll talk a little bit more about the themes that we've heard thus far. We'll have that small group discussion, and following the small group discussion, we're going to get back together to do a report out so we can hear what other groups spoke about, and then talk a little bit about next steps, so where we go from here. And then time or interest permitting, I'm going to turn it back over to Dan if there is an interest for Q&A, but most likely that'll probably happen at a subsequent meeting with Know Before You Grow folks. So with that, we're going to launch into a live poll here. And as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be done through Mentimeter, which is a service that we often use that is a fun kind of interactive way to gather input from you all. So what I'm going to ask is on a second device if possible. So on a cell phone would be great, or a tablet. If you want to go to menti.com And you could also do this on a separate window on your laptop if that's easier. And then when you go to menti.com, if you put in this code, and I'll bring up this code multiple times, so no problem if you miss it this first time, but it's 43345406. And once you get there, you're going to see the poll. It should actually be live. You could actually even start answering some of the questions, but I might ask for you to wait, and I'll bring it up on the screen here shortly. So again, if you go to menti.com, you put in this code 43345406, or as Christina just did handily, you could bring your cell phone up to the screen and grab that QR code, and that'll take you directly to the website as well. And then you could punch in that code. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for 1 second so that I can bring up the Menti poll and get us started here. Let's see. Okay, so let me reshare here. All right. I'm hoping you all can see this screen up. It looks like you can. So we always like to do a quick icebreaker. And my favorite question always to ask is, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream? It's a great way to get to know your neighbors, figure out who has a sweet tooth. So I'm going to wait a few seconds here. Looks like we have a good number of folks here with us tonight, a bit over 20. So once we get to that range, I'll go ahead and push us forward. Oh, wow, we have a lot of others. Okay, when we get into small groups, I want to hear more about the others that don't fit in this neat bubble. Wow, a lot of others. Okay, great. Well, other followed by mint chip, which is my favorite. Excellent, well done. So next, we're gonna actually go to a real question. Okay, mint chip made it back. Okay, they made it come back. Excellent, excellent. Okay, here we go. So it looks like you all are getting a hang of it, which is great. So as we typically do, we ask these demographic questions. Again, we ask the same questions at every meeting, just to gauge who's at the meeting with us, and as we move through the process, who we've talked to and who we need to do a better job of reaching out to. So it would be great if you can share this information with us, and obviously this is all optional, so if you don't like to share, that's okay too. Okay, great to see. Looks like we've reached our average of folks participating. Excellent, thank you for that. And all of this information will be included in the summary of the meeting as well, so we'll definitely share that out. Race and ethnicity, a standard question. In this case, you can select as many as apply to you. So we'll give you all a few seconds to provide this input, which is always helpful. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. Great, thank you for that. And then we want to get a sense from you all of home ownership. There will be a lot of conversation about housing as we move through this process. So again, a standard question that we typically like to ask as we move through this process. Wow, it looks like many homeowners here with us tonight. Okay, great to see, thank you so much. And then also another standard demographic question is household income, which now it starts feeling like you're taking a census, but this is all great information. It's really important, so we appreciate your input here. And then I just have one more question after this, or two more questions, and we'll get started with the meat of the meeting. Okay, excellent. Thank you all for taking that so quickly. And then this question, we want to just get a sense of why you decided to join us here tonight, whether you live in Petaluma, you work in Petaluma, you own a business or property, you just want to know more about this process, or you just kind of want to be informed about the general plan as we move forward. And you could, again, select as many as applies to you. It looks like you all are doing a great job of doing that. Excellent. Okay. So it looks like vast majority is expected live in Petaluma. You all are clearly interested in the general plan process. All right, almost a third of you actually work in Petaluma as well, which is great. Excellent. So my final question is which quadrant you live in. I mean, we're anticipating that we're talking to folks most likely in the Northwest Quadrant, because that's the meeting we are having tonight, but we're also interested to see if folks are coming from different parts of the city, which is fantastic. We'd like to hear from everybody. So this is always a kind of a quick snapshot of who we have in the room with us. Excellent. As suspected, the vast majority live in the Northwest, but a good spattering of folks from throughout the city. So great. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing again here. Thank you so much for taking the time to take that survey. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and bring back the PowerPoint and then hand it over to Ron to get us started. And let me go ahead and share screen again. All right. Ron, over to you.
All right, thank you, Dave and Heather and Gustavo and Dan. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you here with us tonight. My name is Ron Whitmore. I'm a principal with Ramey and Associates and the planning team's project manager for the Petaluma General Plan update. Because this may be the first project activity many of you have participated in, we wanted to provide a little background information. However, it is going to be very high level and brief since we want to devote the bulk of our time tonight to getting to hear your thoughts and input, as Dave mentioned. You can always learn more about the project at planpetaluma.org. And at the end of tonight's session, we'll highlight some of the additional upcoming opportunities you have to get involved and provide additional insight. We'll also, in one of those sessions, as Dave mentioned, or I think Dan mentioned, Planning 101 is coming up, where Christina will go into much more detail about planning, including the general plan's relationship to other plans and the city's land use regulatory system. So, what is a GP and what is the purpose? State law requires that each local government have a general plan. General plan describes a community's vision and establishes policy that guides future local decision-making. Some of the general plan's most important policies inform future land use, development, and related regulation. In addition to policy, the general plan also identifies programs to implement those policies. Importantly, general plans are very long-term and comprehensive. They usually have a 20 to 30-year time horizon and can address a whole wide gamut of community priorities. However, there are 8 required elements of a general plan, all of which have very specific and unique requirements. Over time, a general plan impacts residents' day-to-day life in a number of ways, including the preservation of open space, housing, roadway and path improvements, parks, and economic development, to name a few. Because they have such a long time horizon, general plans are only updated periodically. General plan updates are therefore a unique opportunity to bring a community together, hold a community-wide conversation about priorities and strategies, and collaboratively create a path forward. Not only will Petaluma's general plan update address critical topics, but it will do so in a very holistic way. It focuses on strategies that are synergistic, that accomplish several goals at the same time. In addition, the updated general plan will integrate with other city plans and with its existing regulatory system and decision-making processes, all with an eye towards easy implementation. Again, if you're interested in learning more about general plans in detail, join the upcoming Planning 101 session. So a bit also about the process that we're engaged in to update your general plan. First of all, the project is more than just a general plan update. It also includes a climate action and adaptation plan that builds on the city's climate emergency framework. They are being done in tandem to ensure that they are complementary and consistent. Importantly, also, the planning process builds on recent city planning, like the ULI Technical Assistance Panel report and the recently updated Local Hazard Mitigation Plan. And so the GP is being done in coordination with those, along with other ongoing planning projects like the VMT threshold work and the Bike and Ped master plan that is underway. And then as required by law, there's also an environmental impact report that will be completed in support of all this work. The Petaluma General Plan update is uniquely comprehensive. The scope for this project touches nearly everything that the city does. Including the 8 required elements, this update will address many local priorities like environmental protection, housing, transportation, parks, climate change, and hazard mitigation. I do need to stress, however, that general plans are primarily policy documents. They can't address all of the city's challenges, and they require follow-up action to be effective. Take one example. The general plan can identify the need for a parks master plan, but it will not include that plan. The Petaluma General Plan will be designed for easy implementation, as I mentioned earlier, and it will take years of follow-up activity to fully implement. This is a multi-year project, and we're just getting started. During the discovery phase, the planning team has been preparing background reports for all of the general plan topics. We'll be rolling those out through a variety of plan committee and commission meetings and with GPAC and council meetings in coming months to share some of the key findings from that work. With this area meetings, we're now launching the public visioning phase, which will conclude with the city council adopting the general plan vision and guiding principles later this year. The initial public input will also inform the alternatives phase, which will conclude with the city council adopting a land use policy map, which will guide the city's future development. We will then build on the discovery, visioning, and alternatives work to prepare a complete policy framework for the general plan, which will be the foundation for the final product. General plan updates are a lot of work. And this slide just gives you a snapshot of a handful of some of the work products that will be associated with each of the phases I just described. Importantly, the city's policymaking body, the city council, approves each major interim policy product and will adopt the final updated general plan. The real power of the update is not just the final product, but the process of bringing the community together to inform its development. A general plan is effective to the extent that it reflects representative community input. The community plays a very complementary and important role vis-a-vis the consultant team in the city. City staff provide expertise specific to the city, its operations, and its plans. Consultant team brings a broad range of expertise in planning, engineering, economics, housing, and many other topics. But only the public can provide place-based local knowledge. Therefore, public outreach and engagement is a major focus of this project. At each phase, you and your neighbors will have a variety of opportunities to shape the plan. We are just starting. We will have another round of area meetings during the next phase to discuss specific options for the future of this part of town. And other opportunities to learn and provide input will include surveys, workshops, and forums. As many of you know, and some of the GPAC members are here tonight, there's also a General Plan Advisory Committee, or GPAC, which advises the planning team on an ongoing basis through its regular meetings that are open to the public. For more detailed information and to sign up for regular project updates, please go to planpetaluma.org. The general plan update is not starting from scratch. So I'm now going to give you a brief overview of some of what we've learned so far, including from work that the city did before even officially launching the general plan. Mostly before the general plan update officially started, the city at the council level, back I believe in 2018 or 2019, established city goals and priorities. They recently refreshed and reprioritized those. In addition, a number of activities were done in 2020 as lead-ups and preparatory work for the general plan update, which informed the request for proposals that was released. And that includes a general public survey that went out, and I'll share some of the highlights from that in a second, and also a series of meetings with city committees and commissions. As you know, there's also been other work being done with the climate emergency framework and the recent ad hoc committee focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then we've done some preliminary work also for once we've launched the full project, doing some simple listening sessions to get a sense for some of the highest priority issues in the city. None of this should be a surprise, but here's a high-level summary of the major themes of what has been shared by the community so far. It's a community very committed to sustainability, the environment, safety and resilience, including not just carbon neutrality, but also climate adaptation work. It's also very committed to equity across the community. Obviously, people recognize the need for a variety of new housing, more affordable housing. And many people suggest that doing that, providing that housing most effectively is through infill. In addition to the open space around the city and the agricultural land, people really appreciate the asset at the center of the city, the Petaluma River, both as a natural resource and a recreational resource. And then people recognize a lot of accoutrements for the city could be enhanced and improved and expanded, whether it's transportation, infrastructure, parks, or historic preservation. And people recognize that all this needs to be done with an eye towards a stable, robust, resilient local economy. The next few slides highlight some of the findings from the 2020 survey where people were asked where they'd like to see certain types of improvement. This is very similar to what we're going to be asking you tonight. So we just want to share these kind of as teasers and to start getting your thoughts moving about where you might suggest we make improvements and or enhancements around the city. You can see on this map where people identified opportunities for new housing. The darker dots on this heat map indicate greater numbers of people, indicating preference for housing in that particular area. Likewise for street life. Next slide, please, Dave. You can see that a lot of people think there's an opportunity, even though it's very high quality already, to further enhance street life in the greater downtown area and around the river. Safer streets is also a priority for folks. And again, they're very clear about some of the streets on which safety improvements would be very helpful to make it easier to travel around the city without using a motorized vehicle. And finally, people have identified a number of areas where better transit access would also be helpful as a complement to the bike and ped pathways. And I'm sorry, finally now, people have also identified places where they'd like to see additional park facilities. Okay. So we have a pretty good idea of citywide priorities and opportunities for improvement. So all that input that we just shared as by way of summary is really asking people on a citywide basis. But we still need input that is much more focused on particular parts of town. That is why we're having this series of area and neighborhood and quadrant specific meetings. We know that each neighborhood and part of town is unique. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, we're zooming in on each quadrant of the city and focusing on its particular conditions, issues, and opportunities for change. We wanted to keep this overview short so that we have as much time as possible to listen to you. So let's get to it. I'm now going to pass the baton back to Dave, who will explain the approach we're going to use for the small group breakout conversations and then break us into those small groups. Dave.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ron. It's fantastic to see so many of you here with us tonight. It's a great showing. And I'm in the background trying to kind of get the group dynamic set up, and folks keep joining the meeting, which makes it a little bit tricky, but always a good thing. It's great to see you all here. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to go into the breakout session, and the idea that we had generally set up is to have a two-part discussion, though we found at our last area meeting that folks just want to talk about whatever they want to talk about, which is great too. So just give us your thoughts and we'll try to keep up. But really, we'd like to brainstorm initially on assets and issues. So again, what is unique or special about this area of the city? And then what are the primary issues that you see that the area facing? And then paired with that, we like to do a mapping exercise which again could take place during the first part as well, but then getting location specific, knowing that there might be some areas of improvement needed and areas of change. What should the mix of uses be in that area, from housing to shopping to jobs or whatever it might be? How would you like to see that particular area change? Are there areas that you love and want to preserve exactly the way they are? And then again, in general, what improvements do you think are needed in specific locations within this area? And that could be from anything from transportation improvements to parks to other civic uses, whatever you think could be a benefit for this area. We'd love to hear that as well. And then, as I mentioned before, we're going to do this great exercise together, and then we're going to come back as a group, as the entire group, and do a quick report out. We'll have facilitators and or note takers and or whoever's nominated from those groups give us a quick snapshot of what was discussed. We'll bring the board up so everyone could see it, and then we'll talk a little about next steps and then send you all on your way. So we have a good chunk of time set apart for this. We'll probably come back together about 7:45-ish to do that report out and close it out. But before we get started, I also want to mention to those that are listening along in Spanish that if you would like to continue with the interpreter in Spanish, we're going to have that interpretation going on in this main room. And if you would like to stay in this main room, I'm going to ask if you could use that raise hand feature to let me know that you would like to stay here. If for some reason you do get moved, you can always just come back to the main room and the interpretation will be going on. And Gustavo is sharing that information with anyone that's on the Spanish channel now. And I'm not seeing any raised hands. So if you all could indulge me for one moment here, I am going to make a couple more additions here, and then we're going to go ahead and launch into the small groups. So thank you so much for your patience, and you're going to see something pop up in your screen here momentarily that'll most likely take you directly into one of the rooms, and or you might actually stay right here with me. So keep an eye out for that here in 1 minute here. Okay. Sorry, there's folks that are either leaving the meeting or joining the meeting, so I'm just trying to keep up and make sure we're splitting the rooms up fairly evenly. Looks like we are. Okay, so with that, I'm going to open the rooms, and you're all are going to either get transferred again or stay right here with me, and we'll start our discussion. So have a great time, and we'll see you here shortly. Here for a second. Just thank you real quick to group number one. You all were awesome. It was a really great conversation. And I see folks joining us back here in the main room. Hope you all had a great time. We are going to wait just a few seconds here and allow everyone to trickle back in. And then, as we mentioned before, I'd love to do a quick report out where we'll bounce around to each one of the group facilitators to get a sense of what you all talked about so that we can hear from others that maybe weren't in our group. I know we had a fantastic conversation in group one. So I think everyone is now back, and who is ready to take the first? Oh, let's wait one more second here. Sorry, it looks like folks are still trickling back in. All right. Maybe 5 more seconds here. I thought we had almost everyone back with us. Hi all, welcome back. I was just mentioning that we're going to do a short report out from each one of the groups so that we can all hear from each other in the groups that we weren't necessarily a part of. Okay, I think we're all back. Let's see. I know each time I kind of put someone else on the spot, but Ron, you look particularly jazzed to go first. Is that true?
I'm really excited because a group member nominated another group member to share, and she agreed. So Chris, with support from Lance, I believe, is going to share the insights from our group.
Awesome.
Would you? Yeah, you want to share our?
Yeah, I could share it for you if that's yeah, just to make it easier. Let me bring it up.
Thank you, and thank you, Chris and Lance.
Okay, what would be helpful to see, the map or the notes or both? What would be
I
helpful to
guess
you all?
the map, but
Okay.
I took notes, I'm just gonna talk. So
Excellent.
was a good session. Started out with some impassioned pleas to not build along the river. There were remembrances from people who have lived through flooding in the past in the Payran area. Lots of calls for the Lynch Creek Trail to be developed to make it a place for walkers, bikers, as a great kind of wetland connector to downtown. Lots of talks about trees, especially in Midtown, that neighborhood really does need trees. And there was also a call to replace trees that were lost along the freeway. People were really interested in having the Upper Petaluma River developed as a park. There was talk and there were some comments in the chat about sidewalks in this part of town and how they are dangerous to ankles and dangerous to walk on, and a call for the city to actually take responsibility for the quality of sidewalks. And then there was a plea to keep North Petaluma Boulevard, the north of North Petaluma Boulevard, to retain its rural kind of feel. And then people really appreciated the quiet of some of the neighborhoods. And there was a call to deal with the noise, especially Midtown has a lot of noise issues, and perhaps to look at the racetrack and the noise that comes from the racetrack and the pollution from cars in this time when people are wondering whether so many cars make sense. So I think I caught it. If I missed anything, please, other folks chime in.
That was fantastic, Chris. Thanks so much for giving us so much amazing information in such a short period of time. That was awesome. Well done. I will say our group had very similar sentiment about a lot of what you said, particularly around beautifying streets and more trees. I'm going to ask Michelle if you're ready to take our group before I switch over to Lillian and team. Michelle, do you want to give a quick snapshot of our conversation?
Yeah, similarly, like what Dave just said, a lot of similar comments and suggestions, a lot of strong support for preserving the riparian corridors along the Petaluma River, a large ask to not develop the Rainier Crossing and preserve that area and enhance it as a park for the area. There was also a lot of great comments about converting a lot of residential or older commercial into residential or mixed use, and opening up the possibility of increasing housing availability, and a lot of pockets of opportunities around this area to increase mixed use. An also interesting thing was to preserve a lot of agriculture areas, especially the strawberry patch and the pumpkin patch. I think a bit in the northern area of this area. And also a lot of great comments about the trees and the sidewalk. Well, a lot great trees, but that they cause some sidewalk issues that do need some repair. Is there anything else anyone from our group wants to add?
Excellent. I think you nailed it. That one comment that stood out to me as well is considering walking scores as new housing comes online, and what's around the housing and how easy it is to get there on foot versus relying on other modes of transportation. And someone gave a thumbs up for the allowance of ADUs and how that's kind of bumped up the housing stock throughout the city, but in the area as well. So awesome. Thank you so much for that, Michelle, and great work team in group 1. So now we're going to switch over to group 3, and I'm going to turn it over to Lillian to speak to that, or whoever that you've nominated.
Yeah, I don't think anyone volunteered. It's all just, we talked about a lot of things. So go over some of them. I think we started off, we had a great conversation about really how environmentally sensitive this area is, and how some of the strengths of the existing open space, but really what's needed is more open space and protecting what's already there. We talked about flooding. We talked about, as some of the other groups already said, we got into transportation. the importance of connections, the importance of safety. We talked about removing Renair from the transportation plan. We touched on the importance of green infrastructure, talked about wildlife, and when there's a wildlife corridor, preserving that and the habitat. Does anyone else from the group, is there anything else that they want to chime in on? We talked about limiting development in some areas.
I'd like to underscore that this is area along the river, this riparian corridor is really important to our climate resilience.
Thank you for that, Elizabeth.
Definitely.
Yeah, an excellent,
I
Lillian.
would like to add that,
Sure.
Overall, the whole North River you're hearing is so important to everyone, because not only is it the gem that makes Petaluma, the river town, so special, it's the last remaining virgin segment, wild segment of our river, and it is truly wonderful. But then the underlying thing is the houses that are near there flood. Our backyards flood every year. It's not just the river coming over the wall. It's the water table percolating up during storms. So it's a very special area.
Excellent.
Something that I would like to make sure is in the consciousness of the consultants and the city staff. The Corps of Engineers, when we spent $100 million on the flood project, in their final EIS, I asked them what was going to be the future of flooding over the lifespan of the project, meaning 40 years. And they explicitly said that the modeling for that project included build out of the 1987 general plan, and that build out upstream of the project beyond that will absolutely reduce the flood protections offered by the project and will lead to flooding downtown and in the Payran neighborhood, almost equivalent to what it was prior to the project. And so when we look at development and when the consultants look at development, that has to be first and foremost in your minds.
Thank you for that, David, and everyone who contributed. That was fantastic and exactly what we were hoping the conversation would go, and the information that we gathered is extremely valuable as we move forward in this process and we get to meet with folks or talk with folks about the other areas of town, and this all kind of come together to help act as a foundation as we start to develop the vision, citywide vision, and other elements of the general plan. So thank you again all for being a part of that conversation. With that, I'm going to bring the slide deck back up and hand it back over to Ron to take us through just a reminder of next steps and where we go from here. And then we'll hope to send you on your way real close to 8 o'clock. We might be a couple minutes over, so thank you so much for your patience. And Ron, back over to you.
Great, thank you, Dave. And again, to reiterate what Dave said, thank you very much, everybody, for such a great assortment of ideas, suggestions, strong vision for your neighborhoods for the future, in the future of Petaluma. So again, coming up next, there are 2 more of these area meetings. Next one next Monday, followed by a week from today, focusing first on also including the downtown, but the southwest part of town, and then finally the southeast. So please encourage folks you know who live, work, play in those parts of town to join us. Also, you may see at community activities and events and highly trafficked area around the city in the coming weeks, pop-ups for the general plan update, just another way in which to hear from people where they already are and spend time. People can pop in 5-10 minutes, share their ideas about what they really love and value about the city, what they think the priority issues and opportunities are, and where they'd like to see specific types of change in housing, job centers, or other uses around the city. And then it's been mentioned a couple times, again, in partnership with Know Before You Grow on September 8th, we've got the Planning 101 session that Christina will lead. where she'll take a pretty deep dive for you on the nuances of planning at the local level. Mark your calendar then also at the end of September, having a community-wide workshop focusing on a vision and guiding principles that are foundational for the general plan. As I mentioned earlier, we're also going to, in the coming months, provide updates to the committees and commissions around the city. There's also going to be a series of educational forums focused on some key topics facing the city, many of which you've spoken to this evening. And we're all headed towards an overview of existing conditions before the city council later this fall. And then finally, again, if you're not yet signed up for the project email list, please sign yourself up. It's very easy to do at planpetaluma.org. Likewise, if you have questions about the project, you can always contact Christina and her team at the city through the project email address, planpetaluma@cityofpetaluma.org. I think that is it. Am I turning it back to you, Dave, or Dan?
Yeah, I'll take it back real quick. Bev, I noticed you had your hand raised. I just want to make sure we didn't miss that. Did you have a quick thought that you want to share? Is that up from a previous discussion?
Well, actually, I put it in the chat, but
Oh,
I
great.
think it should be, we should pay attention to the fact that there are some areas that have already been approved for development that should not be developed. It's
Got
in,
it.
it's in total contradiction to what we've been saying tonight.
Got it. I appreciate that. And thank you for putting that in the chat. We'll definitely take that in consideration, as well as the input that I hope you had a chance to provide in the small groups. So I believe we are at the end of our meeting here. Dan, it sounded like you'll regroup with the Know Before You Grow folks tomorrow for a Q&A. So I just want to thank you all again for spending the evening with us. Really great to see you all. And thank you so much for sharing all that great information. And unless Heather or city staff, any other final thoughts, we'll go ahead and close the meeting and send you on your way.
Just thank you to everybody for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, all. Have a great night. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. This
Thank you,
is-
Ramey and Associates.
Thank
Right,
you.
and hope we can have that wonderful tour.
Excellent.
Kayaks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a great night.